the person that I would really want to meet is Magic Johnson. He takes this amazing summer vacation every year on his yacht. And so one year I'm looking at Magic and he's got the picture on his yacht with all the people on it. There, standing next to Magic and Samuel L. Jackson, is Dr. Tony Coles.
Welcome to the BLOC Party podcast, where leaders of color across the life sciences industry come to talk shop, share stories, and keep it real. On this show, we sit down with leaders and innovators across pharma, business, and academia to explore the journeys, lessons, and experiences that have shaped their paths and perspectives. In today's episode, we're picking up right where we left off with part 2 of our conversation with Dr. Tony Coles. We'll dive into purpose, impact, and legacy, exploring how Dr. Coles has worked to cultivate opportunities at the intersection of Black business, culture, and politics. Thanks for joining us, and let's get into it.
So welcome to part 2 of our conversation with Dr. Tony Coles. We had a little bit of technical difficulty, so we decided to chop this up into 2 episodes here. And so excited to continue our conversation, Tony. Thanks. And I'd like to get right into the discussion of, and I'm using your term here, intersectionality, the many ways that you impact the earth. Outside of just what you do, not just, but what you've done in the corporate world. And I'm really fascinated by this part of your life because I think it's one of the things that really differentiates you as an executive, the many, many ways that you've chosen to, and thoughtfully chosen to impact the world. So my first question is, how do you decide? You have so many different opportunities. You've founded some organizations like the Black Economic Alliance. You're on a bunch of really impactful boards, but I'm sure you had many more opportunities than the ones that you've selected. So how do you decide where you're going to jump in?
Well, it's great to be back, first of all, and really happy we can continue the discussion. You know, this is something I've thought through after we sold Onyx to Amgen a little more than a decade or so ago. I obviously had free time on my hands and wanted to think and be thoughtful about how I would use that free time. So in addition to spending more time with family in that particular chapter, I sat and I thought, you know, I really love business, so I'd like to continue to be involved in business. But I came up with what I call the 3-legged stool. It's not a very original metaphor, but it actually works in this case because one leg of the stool was to continue to involve myself in business. And we've talked a lot about what that looked like across Cerevel and Humanity and some of the other things I continued to do. The other was to be involved in the arts and the culture. And that I want to talk a little bit about that because that is something that's been really meaningful to me for a long period of time. And the final was to ensure that I could be involved in some way in matters of policy, health policy, but even indirectly, perhaps politics. And so that's exactly where Black Economic Alliance involvement sits and fits in a way. I had done some health policy work testifying on Capitol Hill when I was running Onyx, the cancer company, and I liked it because I thought this is just another way to actually leverage impact to do good for even more people. So those are the 3 legs of the stool: business, arts and culture, and policy and / politics. The arts and culture, though, is something that really does speak to my heart. I was 8 or 9, 10 years old, and I got a sketchbook.
Oh, wow.
From my parents, and I started with pencil and charcoal, just sketching, and realized that I could while away hours, sketching and thinking about that. So they put me in an art class. I grew up in Washington, D.C., and they put me in an art class at the Smithsonian Institute. And I would go every Saturday and we'd experiment with different media. I must have been 9 or 10 years old or so. And I now look back, while it was a fun thing for me, I think my parents just wanted me out of the house. So they just said, we're going to put you in an art class. But that really informed my life. It opened up a channel for expressing myself more completely. Fast forward now, I'm involved again at the Smithsonian.
Yeah, what a full circle. What a full circle moment.
I think about this all the time. You mentioned in your introduction that I am chair of the advisory board for the Smithsonian African American Museum. So it's been a wonderful way to receive something as a kid, which was opening up the world of arts and culture, and to give back now in terms of the service and the leadership there. But those three areas topically have informed the choices that I've made. And that three-legged stool hasn't changed since the early 20-teens, when I first figured out that this was how I wanted to spend my life. I'm on the board at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, so that's another way to express my interest in arts and culture. And Robin and I, when I was a young man, just after medical school, she said, if money were no issue and you could do anything in the world you want to do, what would you do? And I thought for a second, because it was a big question. And I said, I would be an art historian. And so you see the through line from that 9 or 10-year-old kid who's sketching, taking art classes at the Smithsonian, to someone who really said, if I could do anything in the world, it would be to be an art historian, to the person I am today, involved in arts and culture in a variety of ways. So that has been a thread that's been fully pulled through, and probably more to come, because I really, as you can tell by the background, I just love art. I just love art.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And I do want to spend a little bit of time on the Black Economic Alliance. Tell us a little bit more what prompted you to found this organization. What are you trying to accomplish through this organization?
The year was 2017, I think, when we thought about starting this organization. We actually didn't know what to do. We knew that we were about 50 years post the Civil Rights Act. And while Black Americans had made a significant amount of progress in education, in the corporate world, in the entertainment space, in a variety of corners, we still hadn't realized the economic justice or the economic equality that I think one would hope. The Civil Rights Act opened the door for that to be the case, but somehow we hadn't quite fully realized or figured out how to close the racial income gap, the racial wealth gap. And we started looking at statistics such as the notion that if a Black family has probably 1/5 the net worth or wealth of an average white family, the average white high school dropout made more and had higher net worth than the average Black college graduate. And when you look at statistics like that, when you look at statistics like that, you really do understand some of the basic inequities in our society. So we set about trying to understand and answer the questions of how we could improve that. And I will remember that in the summer of 2017, we got a small group of Black business leaders from across the country together at an event, really to examine the state of Black America. This was during the first Trump administration, and we really wanted to try to understand how we could advance the ball to close some of these gaps that we were observing. And what we knew, while we didn't know the answer, we knew that if we got enough smart people in the room, we'd come up with some really good ideas. So Senator Kamala Harris was there, Senator Cory Booker, Governor Deval Patrick, Ambassador Susan Rice. It was virtually a who's who of the Black political leaders to give us a sense and an overview. And from that session, we recognized there was an opportunity for us to collectively combine not just our interests, but our wallets and pocketbooks to gain the kind of leverage that we want to affect the kind of change that we want on behalf of Black America. And that's turned out to be a really rich and rewarding experience. We've had a lot of wonderful successes. The Black Economic Alliance has opened a Center for Black Entrepreneurship, which is headquartered in Howe, Spelman, and Morehouse. It's in its 4th year of operation. Both colleges now have minor degree programs in entrepreneurship, because one of the fastest growing segments of entrepreneurs in this country are Black women. Who knew?
Wow, did not know that.
Black women are really interested in being entrepreneurs, and there's broad interest across the community. And we wanted to give formal opportunity or experience or training to individuals who had this interest. So that program is off to the races, and we're really proud of that. We've been involved in several senatorial House and races, including presidential races at the national level, have endorsed candidates who would be supportive of an economic opportunity agenda for Black Americans. So the organization is exceeding my expectations. We have a lot to do and a long way to go. But I like to think that we've actually put some dollars in the pockets of Black Americans, into Black communities, and really given people, whether you are a first-time homeowner and looking for that as a pathway to wealth creation, or you are an entrepreneur and you just need access to capital. So no matter where you're participating, open doors to really work to close the income and wealth gaps that I talked about a moment ago.
Before we get back into the conversation, here's a quick word from BLOC. BLOC is a member-supported community dedicated to connecting and empowering professionals across biotech, pharma, and healthcare. If you're not already a member, we'd love to have you join us, whether you're a student, scientist, or CEO. And if you're enjoying the BLOC Party podcast, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and leave a comment or two. Now let's get back to the party.
And one question on intersectionality and all of the things that you've been involved with. One of the things I wanted to know is you got to meet many people. I'm sure many people when 12-year-old Tony Coles never thought that he would ultimately get to meet and be in the same room with. So what's one person that you got to meet and you were just like, wow, I can't believe I'm sitting here with this person, and they were that much more impressive than you even thought?
This one is so easy.
Oh, really?
It is.
You're gonna say me, right?
I'm setting you up, Rob. Just let me set you up, brother. Let me just it's going to be good, I promise. But it ends with you. But it's an easy question to answer, and I actually, as you were answering the question, I thought about some of the friends that you and I have in common, and people who are doing really interesting and doing great things in the world. But probably the most memorable experience was a meeting with Coretta Scott King.
Oh, wow.
I've been really privileged, and I've had the pleasure to be around some unusual tables with some really extraordinary people. But it's easy because this was such a standout. And that was a chance meeting with Coretta Scott King. And I was a young executive at Merck, Mrs. King, and a very small entourage of other civil rights icons and leaders came to Merck to try to understand the role of corporate America in increasing diversity, both corporate and otherwise. So this would have been about 30 years ago. It would have been around 1995 or so. And I simply could not believe that I was sitting in the room with someone who had really a mother of the struggle, as it were, who had seen so much and whose family had sacrificed so much, even personally, not just in the trade-offs they made, but in the loss of her husband, who's done so much for so many people. So it was wonderful. And what I remember about her was her grace, her elegance, her poise, her focus, her ability to really get right to the heart of the question, which is, what will you, corporate America, do for the cause? And that was really it was not only an awe-inspiring moment, but it was a moment of, I think, giving me an opportunity to double down on my commitment to make a difference in the world. And in a way, it's part of this service and give back to the Black community that has sprung from those kinds of meetings. But I will not forget that for all the days I'm on this earth.
Wow, what a cool answer. And I know this is your interview, but for me, the person that I would really want to meet is my kind of athletic hero, Magic Johnson. And so, I follow Magic, and he takes this amazing the summer vacation every year on his yacht, and I like looking.
You are
to
not
see
right.
where he's going. And so one year I'm looking at Magic, and he's got the requisite picture on his yacht with all the people on it. And I'm looking, and I'm like, standing next to Magic and Samuel L. Jackson is Dr. Tony Coles, and I'm like, wow. Obviously, he lost my text chain to be able to hook a brother up. So
You are not right. There's something seriously wrong with you. Okay, we're gonna have to talk about this after this. So, the wonderful part, those are great friendships, and I cherish those friendships, and I cherish both men, and they have amazing families as well, and we've obviously become quite close over the years. I think what I would say, and this harkens back to the question of all these amazing tables and amazing rooms and fascinating people. What I recognize is that they're just people who have emotions and thoughts and issues and insecurities. So they have celebrity and they have profiles where they can actually do a lot of good, and both individuals do. Sam Jackson and his wife are very philanthropic. Magic Johnson and his wife Cookie are also really philanthropic and have given a lot back to the Black community. So I take those kinds of experiences away, which is really less about what do you do day to day as a profession, and what will you do to use your platform on behalf of other people. And that's something I learn about every time I'm with the two of them.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for indulging me there. But I want to move into the final segment, and this I think is in many ways the most important, and that's to try to tease out some last thoughts and insight from you. And one of the places that I want to start is, we've had a chance to talk a lot about our kids over the years, and you have 3 amazing sons. I can only imagine the insight that you've imparted to them over the years. But one of the questions I have for you is, as you've, I used to say that one of the proof sources that God has a sense of humor is when he puts your weaknesses in your children. And you could see it in them, and you could see all that you've been through to try to overcome that weakness and to try to teach them and figure it out. So what are some of the things that you've told your sons that maybe you can share with our community that would be insightful for young people who are either getting started in our industry, or maybe even our mid-career and things, want to try to achieve the levels that you've achieved? What insight can you provide?
Well, there is a vignette that I want to share, but I want to set the context for the vignette. You guys have met or will meet my amazing wife, Robin. And she and I have been in obviously several conversations, namely about how we want to raise the kids. And one of the most important conversations we had about child rearing was the answer to a question I posed, which is, what is the legacy that we want to leave our kids? Now, on the surface of it, it's a simple question. It may be harder to answer, and I think most people, when they think about legacy, might think about, will you leave them property, or can you leave them money, or whatever any of those material things are. But one of the ways in which we sat and we answered that question was, there are 2 things we want to do. We want to give them the opportunity to develop a deep and abiding love and faith in God, and the best education we could possibly afford. Because what we knew is Black men, they would have a particular set of challenges growing up in American society. And if they could think their way out of problems or pray their way out of problems, they would be all right. Yeah. Those are the 2 things that really served as the cornerstone for how we wanted to raise them.
That's fantastic.
Together, reading the Bible, we would pray together. We do all the kinds of things that really helped. And then we gave them the best education we could afford, which actually meant we didn't have furniture in our living room for many years. So that is a true story. It used to be the playroom and then the racetrack for the cars. But no, I have 0 regrets about those choices, because they have been really fortunate to have wonderful educations, and they're all decent, smart, human and humane people. And that really is, I think we've lived that legacy. Time will tell, but I think that's the gift. The vignette I wanted to share, though, was we were living in Boston at the time. They were in private school in Boston. a day school, Buckingham, Brown and Nichols, and I was on pickup duty this particular day. So I picked up all three boys, from the lower school, from the middle school, and from the high school, which where they were spread across. And they start in the back seat whinging about the homework that they've got, and and it's just typical kid stuff. They were truly unhappy. And I said to them, I didn't do what my dad used to do to me and stop the car and turn around and have that conversation. But I did slow down, and I said, I want you guys to realize how truly fortunate you are to have this set of experiences and this opportunity. And you may take it for granted, but what I'll tell you as your father is that if you leave this earth exactly the way you found it, you will have squandered your life.
Mm.
And they sat up a little straighter in the back seat. And it was a really interesting moment because the middle child, Taylor, said, I don't know about these guys, but I'm not wasting my life. And it was a really wonderful moment, and the beginning of lots of other conversations about purpose in life and what you'll do. But it came full circle, this focus on the legacy of an education to this particular teaching moment about be grateful for the opportunities that you've had. I think it's helped.
That's awesome. And last question, we get a lot of young people who maybe aren't even in the industry yet, but want to access the industry. And I'm quite sure that over your time, whether it's nieces, nephews, it's kids of acquaintances who call you and say, hey, how can I get into this industry? How do you answer that question when people talk to you about accessing the industry? What's your answer? How can we be virtual Uncle Tony Coles for people who want to get that advice from you?
It actually depends upon the stage they're in at the moment. They ask the question. It's a little different for a high school student who might have an interest in biology. And I'm making an obvious point, but I think it's important to understand the context of their experience and how broad their set of options actually could be. When you're in medical school or graduate school and you're trying to decide about a career in either science or the clinic as a practitioner, or business school, law school, health policy school, something like that, then the advice is really different because there's a maturing that's taken place against which you can make this particular judgment. And I talk to young people all the time who are across that entire spectrum, and even early to mid-career people. So I get an opportunity to be in some really fascinating conversations to understand. And one of the first questions I contemplate is why? Why do you want to make this particular choice? Why do you want to go into biopharmaceuticals? Why do you want to become a CEO? It depends on the conversation, but I think thinking about the why is crucial, because once you understand the why, then you can aim in a direction that will help you achieve the why. And I think that's really important. It used to be the case that if you wanted a career in biopharmaceuticals, and take my background in particular as a clinician, there were very, very few opportunities to do that. There are more now, and it's not uncommon at all for individuals to get an advanced graduate degree after college, or whether it's a business degree or some other degree in health policy, if you will, and then make a different set of choices. But I think coming back to the why really does inform the how you can actually access the industry. And I think if we are all clear, I see this as a 65, about to be 66-year-old man. I think about my why all the time, even at the age that I am. So this isn't advice for people who are trying to figure out their careers. This is life advice for us as human beings.
Absolutely.
What we do and how we spend our time.
Fantastic. Tony, anything that I should have asked you that I didn't?
Rob, this has been such a wonderful conversation, and I was reflecting in our interlude between part one and part two. I was reflecting on really how wonderful and thoughtful the questions have been. And I applaud you for pulling all these things out of me, including how I spend my summer vacations. I think you've done a remarkable job. I just think I might conclude with one statement. I think we have such an amazing opportunity as Americans, and specifically Black Americans. And it is, I did, well, we didn't talk about this, but I did attend Reverend Jesse Jackson's funeral recently.
Mhm.
And it was important because he was an early supporter of BEA. We'd gone to talk to him about starting the organization. He was very helpful in giving advice. And President Obama, and you've probably seen these comments on social media, said one thing that I was really, he said, "It is hard to hope right now." And I found that really liberating because it gave me permission to recognize the hopelessness that some of us feel.
Mhm.
But then he went on, and I now have gone on to really ask the questions of, well, what is it that we need to do to actually ensure, because this will end. It's just a question of what we will inherit once we're past this chapter, and what we can do to actually reconstruct the world the way we want to. So I think about this as, Dr. Pernille Joseph at UT Austin talks about the third reconstruction. This is, if the first reconstruction was the historical one that we know after the Civil War, and the second reconstruction was the Civil Rights era from the mid-1950s to the late 60s, we've got a real opportunity. And we should, as I said to my kids all those years ago, not squander the opportunity to take advantage of this reconstruction.
Well, look, I can't thank you enough, Tony, for doing this, for being such a wonderful guest as we launch this podcast. And I'll leave you with this. You mentioned the impact your parents had on you, and my parents had similar impact on me. And they said there are three things you need to be successful in life: study hard, make sure that your academics are there, live with integrity, and if there's any way possible, become friends with Tony Coles. And so I will just leave you and say my parents are proud of me right now.
Oh
And
gosh.
I couldn't be more appreciative of having
Well,
you as a guest on the BLOC Party.
I love you, man.
I actually, if I can have a sneaky question to slide in right here, just here on behalf of the next generation, as an early career person, sometimes I look at my friends and I hope that we can be in, similar positions to y'all, just kind of cutting up on a podcast in 30 or 40 years. So I want to ask, first off, seeing you two, very driven by impact, having achieved so much so far on your paths, can you just rewind for a second and tell us, how you met, give us a little bit more detail into how you kind of formed this relationship, and also how you prioritize sustaining meaningful relationships like this with people you can depend on, who can check you, but also kind of, make sure that you're in alignment in terms of your path, your impact, and, your intellect overall.
Rob, why don't you go first?
Yeah, my recollection of meeting Tony was we were both, I think you were at Vertex and I was at Biogen, and we were both kind of senior commercial people. We were Black men in that environment, and we kind of connected and decided we should know each other. It was kind of ridiculous that we didn't. And from there, Tony's career skyrocketed. And I knew from the very first days that this is someone who I do want to have a relationship with, can be very, very impactful for me. And he became a mentor. That's the best way to put it, a mentor and a sponsor. So when the most important decisions of my life, I've run by Tony, particularly from a corporate standpoint. But I was saying to my wife yesterday, Tony, we were at dinner, and I said, I still remember sitting on the couch in our living room in the suburbs, talking to you about private school for my son.
Oh, wow.
And
I remember
and
that.
we were going back and forth and weren't sure about it, and you just gave me tremendous advice, and just that's the level of depth in our relationship, and somebody who, when I really needed some insight, I go to, because I know he's going to provide insight, just as he's done throughout this conversation. So that's my recollection.
I can't disagree with that. I've got a couple of friendly amendments. First of all, you should tell Mitch I said hello. Uh, and I think it's turned out okay for him,
Yes, it has.
your son. Secondly, I want to set the record straight that I'm a big believer in peer mentorship. And what I think Rob means to say is that as peer mentors, because I am not 80 years old yet, so, and 1,000 years, away from. But you have done what's been wonderful about this. I think there is a collegiality and there's a bond and there's a Black brotherhood.
Mhm.
And I say that because we're both men, not and I value Black sisterhood as well. And I've got great friends and mentors who of both genders who have been instrumental in my life. But there is something to the Black brotherhood as we lift each other up and help each other. And you've done that for me in some of my later career decisions and opportunities. And I'm grateful for the ease with which we can speak frankly with the shared understanding we have about what this journey has been and is likely to be. And you just been there. You've been there when I needed you. And I have truly, truly appreciated. So tell me, it's a great question, but I'd hearken back to the Black brotherhood. And it's a little bit of, you see another Black person across the room, you automatically gravitate. And we found each other in Boston, across the big room of Boston, and I gravitated towards each other. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful we did.
Thank you.
That is awesome. Definitely inspiring. So to wrap up this part 2, we're going to finish off with our BYOX segment. So I actually brought a little something to share with the BLOC Party. And unfortunately, I wish I had a miniature boat because I was going to get that yacht story out of you one way or another. But I have a little seal here keeping the aquatic theme. Don't ask why I have a seal instead of a boat. But anyway, I know you were talking actually earlier in our kind of pre-call, and you dropped briefly like, oh yeah, you probably aren't too curious about the whole yacht situation. And like I remember just being like, no, we need to go back and cover that. But then going on discussing like your roles with the Met and with the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. It's like, wow, this person's on a whole different scale of influence. And just like more seriously than the seal, it was really inspiring to hear how intentionally you've been active in all these different spaces, how you've been able to do it so authentically. And I guess I'm still workshopping personally how I even want to show up in a lot of these different spaces. A lot of myself and a lot of my friends are artists, and we're passionate about culture, we're passionate about arts. And sometimes it can feel like there's no way to engage both as a STEM professional and within the culture. And it's just very helpful and inspiring to see how you don't really need to inherently like code switch your soul. And there are people at the top of the game that can achieve that balance and, center faith, center culture, be excellent in all these different ways and actually gain fulfillment in that way. So this has already brought me so much value in this conversation. Really appreciate it.
So I have a BYO. And it's S for a statement. And it's a statement that I believe very much in, and Tony reminds me of it. And it's the quote is, every system is perfectly designed to produce the results it's producing. And the fact that our world is going to continue on as it is, unless there are people like Tony who are doing impactful things to make the system different. And in some instances, that means breaking the process that currently exists. In other instances, it means creating a new process. But there needs to be people who are willing to activate and to really have a change in that system in order for the world to actually improve. And I think that's what we heard today. So thank you, Tony, for being someone who does create a brand new system and an opportunity for the world to be a better place.
Thank you, Rob.
I remember, Rob, when the first time I
discovered BLOC, that was your BYOS in Boston at Bio 2023. And I walked away like, I have to be part of this organization. And I really pried my way in. And I don't know how I'm on this podcast with y'all, but like hear that come full circle. It's like you and meeting Tony and seeing your inspiration and you being mine and just seeing this all kind of come together. And also the fact that I have the worst BYO. So Man, why did all of you guys have the best BYOX? Tommy's over here, BYOP, brought his wife. Tommy has a, you guys, I brought Skinny Pop. Like, I brought Skinny Pop, and then I was like, okay, I'll bring my Filipino snack, but I guess we can end there. But this was
Ain't no shame in a BYO snack at all.
Well, you know what? Interestingly, we all brought a BYOS, from the seal to the statement to the snack to your spouse. So there we go.
The BLOC Party podcast is proudly produced by Biopharma Leaders of Color, a nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing leadership and community across biopharma and the broader life sciences industry. If you like this episode and want to learn more about our events, programming, or how to join as a member, visit blocimpact.org. That's BLOCimpact.org. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you at the next BLOC Party.